What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I am your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. Guys, real quick, if you're serious about scaling your property investments, then you need to check out my Elite Property Accelerator. Whether you are stuck on raising capital or structuring deals, or indeed just finding the right opportunity, this is the blueprint you need to take your portfolio and your finances to the next level. No fluff, just real world strategies that work. So guys, hit the link below. It says learn more, and I shall see you inside. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. And assuming everything has gone according to plan, this is the second scheduled Monday podcast episode that I'm uploading. And while you're listening to this, I'm hopefully lounging by the pool in sunny Tenerife because it's the midterm break and I'm taking the family away. And so a little bit of R&R. I wanted to get this episode out, and it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. And the reason that I told you about my travel to Tenerife is not to annoy you or to make you envious of me being away. It's actually because it's like a bit of a segue into the topic that I'm talking about today, which is tenacity. And it begins when I'm going to tell a story about a recent trip to Rome. Now, you might be wondering, tenacity, trip to Rome, like what's that got to do with being an investor and stuff? But I'm tying it all together, and I think you'll find this episode valuable. So let's talk about tenacity and its importance as a trait that you have as either an investor or an entrepreneur. So a couple of weeks ago, it was my wife's birthday, and she had said to me, the way, you know, your better half often does, is a little whisper, wouldn't it be lovely to get away on my birthday? And little hints are dropped and things like that. And sure enough, I got the hint that Rome would be a very desirable place to visit on her birthday. And she sends me text messages and things like that have like, look at this beautiful thing, this beautiful hotel. And it's ever so subtle, not so subtle, ever so subtle, little, messages and reminders that, hey, look at this would be nice, wouldn't it? So anyway, I'm very attuned to these, and I like to make sure that she feels appreciated. And so sure enough, I organized the trip. And what was especially welcome about this trip was because it was the very same weekend as the now famous mega storm Owen that we all experienced recently. And I know a lot of people, they lost power and they lost water, and I believe it was the strongest wind speed ever recorded in the country. In contrast to all of that, I was walking around Rome in a t-shirt, and it was 17 degrees, cloudless, sunny sky, and it was fantastic. But it was not a smooth trip to get there, let me assure you. So I'll set the stage for you. I have a Wednesday, if those of you who are on my mastermind call, you'll know all about this, but I have a Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. call with my mastermind clients. And we sit down every week and we have a chat about the market and what's going on, who's buying, who's selling, all of this stuff. And I was there thinking, okay, the call is in an hour. What can I do? I know, I'll check the four of us in for the flight tomorrow morning. And at least that will be done. And I'll go into the call, and then I'll be done for the evening. And as I'm putting in the details, they ask you for the passport details and stuff. I'm punching in all of the dates of my passport, my wife's passport, and then my daughter's passport. And as I punch it in, this red ink comes up on the screen and it says invalid passport date. And I was just like, did I make a mistake there? And I looked at the passport and I looked at the thing and I realized, oh my God, my daughter's passport is 3 weeks expired. And this is the night before the flight. Like, we're getting up at 5 a.m. to get to the airport for the 9 a.m. flight. And so horror stations, that sinking feeling when you don't quite believe it yet, but this is definitely not looking good. And so I put in a quick call to my wife and I just said, I have a concern. And she thought I was joking. And she said, what are you talking about? She was in a barber shop getting my son's haircut for our little trip, and silence on the other end of the phone when I told her. And so I went back upstairs. The mastermind call was on, sat down, and all I could think of, I was kind of like a deer in the headlights. I was talking to the guys on the call and I was just saying, I've just tried to check in. I've just realized that our daughter's passport is out of date. And I was trying to process this during the call with the guys. And they were saying, can you do this? Can you do that? And I was just like looking at all the options. And I was just like I just don't know how I'm going to fix this. And so anyway, we had our call. We didn't allow it to get derailed by all of this. But the consensus from the group, and this was kind of the worst thing about it, is the consensus from pretty much everyone that was on the call was, shit, man, what a bummer. It doesn't look like you're going to be going to Rome. So, and especially because Storm Owen was arriving the next day. And so it was one of these things where, well, I'm going to miss my flight in the morning because I'm going to have to get a new passport. Perhaps I can get an afternoon flight. But if I can't get that afternoon flight, there is no way, like the planes will be downed. Like there will be no planes taking off during the middle of the worst storm in like history, apparently. So I finished the call, 7 p.m, went downstairs to find my wife sitting on the stairs in tears. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that triggers me. And I instantly kind of like just thought, okay, I reassured her, don't worry, honey. We are going to Rome tomorrow. I will sort this out. And as a husband and as a father or as a partner or whatever, like a lot of you will probably recognize that feeling. Like when you see somebody that you care about hurt and upset and it's her birthday the next day and all that kind of stuff, you kind of think, I will do anything to get this sorted. And so that was the mindset I started. So I went back up to the office in absolute fix-it mode. And I made a commitment to myself there and then. We're going to Rome tomorrow, no matter what. And then I had to try to figure out like how to solve the problem. And what was at stake here, I had the flights paid for the four of us. I had the hotel, and I because it was our first trip to Rome, right smack in the middle of the best area, basically. Nice hotel, really, really central. I had to prepay for the entire hotel. And then it was her birthday as well. So we were looking at a total loss of all of that expenditure. And so the first thing to do when you're in this situation, certainly in the way I look at it, is I break it down into steps and into tasks. And so step number 1, have to fix the passport. You're not going anywhere without a passport. So needed photographs. Straight in the car with my daughter, drove to Dundrum, and there's a photo processing machine at the Tesco in Dundrum. Sat her down on the seat. 2 minutes later, we have a set of photographs. Straight to the Garda station in Shankill, near where I live, and went in there, grabbed one of the forms, filled it out right in front of them, and then I got them to sign my daughter's photographs, and then walked out of the Garda station with the form filled and the photographs signed, and opened up the app and booked 9 a.m, first appointment of the day in the passport office the next morning. And you have to prepay there and then for your passport. So it's an extra €150 for an emergency sort of like rapid replacement. And so did that. Next morning, that's step 1 taken care of. Next morning, We'll cover that when we get there. Step 2 was, okay, try to fix the flight situation now. I have prepaid for a 9 a.m. flight. My appointment at the passport office is for 9 a.m. So not going to be in two places at the same time. I decided that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have to miss that flight. But what I'll try to do in the interim is try to find a later flight and maybe move my tickets, and you just pay the difference. So I looked at the trip to Rome that was at 4 p.m. sold out. Then I looked at another airline, sold out. Then I said, what if we were to fly to Venice, which is the other side of Italy, which would have meant a big long train journey, but that was also sold out. So I went down to my wife and she was still crying, and she was kind of like, look, it's all finished, it's ruined, it's blah, blah, blah. Not feeling very optimistic. And I just said, pack the bags, make sure that you're ready to leave first thing in the morning, because we're going to go to the passport office with the bags in the back of the car, and we're going straight to the airport afterwards. So she, at this stage, I don't think she believed that it was likely to happen, but she kind of just was following instructions. And I sort of said, look, let's just do this. So we went next morning, bags were in the car, left nice and early, got to the passport office, go up to the window, and they said it will be 2 p.m. when your passport will be ready at 2 p.m. or whatever. And I just said, listen, I need it sooner than that. How quickly can you give it? And she's like, we can only give it if you actually have flights already booked and paid for. And I said, have a look at my phone here. And I showed her, and she could see that the flight had just left and that I was trying to get a later flight, and that's what I needed this passport for. So she was like, okay, sit down, take a seat. And like literally 90 minutes later, I had a passport printed in my hand, and I was in the car driving to the airport. So airport, go up to the ticket desk. I say to the lady, here's the situation. Here's the new passport. What can you do for us? And to be fair, this is Ryanair now. Ryanair sometimes gets a bad rap, but the lady behind the desk could not have been nicer, really. Clickety-clack on the keyboard. She says, the flight to Rome is at 4 p.m. You could make that flight. And I was like, yes, but it's completely sold out. I tried to move the tickets last night. And she goes, yes, it's sold out, but there are 17 people who have not yet checked in, and it's only 3 hours to like gate closing, basically. And she says most of the time everyone's checked in before the flight. And so with 17 people not yet checked in, she said you have a pretty good chance of getting seats as a standby passenger. And so I said, okay, give us 4 standby tickets. Now, she explained that if you don't get on the flight, you get a refund and all that. And that was going to mean the end of the holiday, because the flights the next day were cancelled because of Storm Owen. So anyway, checked the luggage, went to the boarding gate, and I was told, explain to the lady that you're trying to group yourselves together, because as a family, you have to put one adult with one child. You can't put children sitting on their own. So did all that. And 10 minutes later, the lady comes back. I've got good news and bad news for you. I was like, oh, Jesus, what's the good news? The good news is the 4 of you are flying to Rome on this flight. And I was like, yes, how could there be any bad news? Like, what's the bad news? And she goes, unfortunately, I have to split you up. So 2 of you are sitting on the front of the plane, 2 of you are sitting at the very back of the plane. And I was like, well, I think we can both live with that. So as I was boarding the flight, I put a photograph of us at the steps of the plane, and I sent it into the Mastermind WhatsApp group, and I just said, for those of you following the drama, have a look at where I am. And everyone was like, what, whoa, and congratulations and all this kind of stuff. Hey guys, if you're listening to this and thinking, I'd love to invest in property, but I don't even know where to start, well, I've got you covered. I am launching the Property Starter Pack on the 1st of March. It's designed specifically for beginners. There's no jargon. There is no overwhelm. It's just a step-by-step plan to buying your first property, whether that's your home or an investment property. You want to do that with confidence. And here's the kicker. The first 100 people to pre-register are going to get an exclusive early bird discount. And so I've put a link below to register your interest. And so find that in the show notes below and secure your spot. Now, back on with the episode. you're probably scratching your heads wondering, how on earth does this story relate to investment and entrepreneurship? And the reason I say it is it's about tenacity. And I could have just given up. Like when the guys in the call were saying, it doesn't look like, it looks so shit, man. And what a bummer. It doesn't look like you're going to Rome tomorrow. And I could have just accepted that and just said, okay, shit, next time we won't make this mistake. And I started thinking, about insurance. Maybe the insurance will pay us back the money that we've lost on this and stuff. But I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to go to Rome, whatever it takes, even if it meant flying to Venice and having to take a train back. I think the train journey was like 5 hours or something, but I was willing to do that to get to Rome for this trip. And so let me ask you listening right now, do you keep your promises? Do you keep them to your family? Do you keep them to yourself? And it's super important that you keep your promises, especially the ones that you make to yourself. Now, if you arrange, let's just use the analogy of you're arranging to meet somebody, an old pal, for dinner, and you book a restaurant and you go in and you're sitting there at the restaurant and you're waiting to see your friend. You haven't seen them in a while. And you're sitting there and there's a no-show. And you're kind of like, geez, I hope the person's okay. So you pick up the message and you send them a message and it's like, hey, how you doing? I'm sitting at the table. Are you coming? Oh, geez, I forgot. Sorry, man. We'll do it next time. Okay. You can imagine how you would feel in that situation. So the second time you organize, you reschedule, you go in and you're sitting there. And the second time the person's like, sorry, man, something came up in work. I can't do it. Like, how many more times are you going to reschedule to meet that person? If it was me, never again. That person, you'll never see that person again because it's just so disrespectful to you. But the reality is that is essentially what you're doing to yourself when you let yourself down, when you break your own promises to yourself. And in the same ways you would lose all faith in that person, the same happens when you break these commitments that you make to yourself. So, do you keep your promises? I would say yes, keep your promises. Now, as an example, the day we arrived back from Rome back into Dublin, the storm here in Dublin was raging still pretty badly. We were driving back in the car and the rain was like pounding against the window, like you could barely see out the window with the windscreen wipers full on. It was very, very windy. The car was getting thrown around. And it was like Baltic temperatures because the wind was strong and it was cold. So it was like -1 outside or whatever. And I had made a commitment to myself that as soon as I get back, I'm going for a run because I won't have done much running while I'm away. I won't have done any kind of working out while I'm away with the family and stuff. And so I'm driving there. I'm looking out the window. The windscreen wiper is like struggling to kind of cope with the rain. And I'm thinking to myself, given these conditions, it's probably okay to let the old run sessions slide. What do you think? So I did the run. Frozen as I was, drenched as I got in the initial stages of it, it actually dried up nicely. But every time, the reason I did this, it's not like I'm not here to kind of, blow my own trumpet and talk about how great I'm here because it's the point is that every time you quit, every time you don't do something that you told yourself that you would do, every time you break a promise or just kind of like let something slide, hit the snooze button instead of getting up, or if you cave in and you decide, I'm going to eat that extra thing rather than sticking to the diet. Every time you do that, every time you put something off until tomorrow that could be done right now, that you had said you were going to do right now, it's an ever so subtle erosion of the belief that you have in yourself, that you have in your abilities, and you have in the ability for you to overcome challenges. And you might kind of think, oh, come on, Gavin, one run, like what the hell? But the thing is it's not one run. Usually it's a combination of lots of those things. And slowly over time, they build up and they create this perception in your subconscious mind that I don't do things. Like I'm not really reliable. I don't commit to this kind of stuff. So I would recommend strongly Keep your promises to yourself, especially the ones that you make to yourself. Now, you may be wondering, how am I going to pull this even more closely to investment and entrepreneurship? And it's quite easy, because investment and entrepreneurship is a challenging undertaking. The pursuits there's never a guarantee of success with these pursuits. So the only way you're going to become successful is if you're tenacious and if you don't allow yourself to fail. Like, always push through. If no matter how difficult it looks, no matter how helpless, at least give it your best effort, and don't kind of like, oh, I'll just leave it. I'll let it go this time. That song by Sia, Unstoppable, I love that song. That's a great song, and that is what you need. You need to bring that tenacity and grit. And the reason I'm saying that is because I get a lot of messages on social media, and guys will say, I've just been rejected for the mortgage. And I kind of say, don't let it deter you. Find another way. Go out there, figure it out. And I know, talking with my group, the guys are all figuring out ways to do it. And like, there may be little, where areas that they maybe bend the rules a little bit or whatever, but they make a commitment to themselves that they're not giving up until they qualify for that loan, and they get in and they do it. And if you get outbid on, say, your third property that you've offered on, don't let that deter you. Maybe you just have to drop this one, but keep looking, keep on going after deals, keep on watching the market, keep doing your best. Nobody said this was going to be easy. Don't fool yourself, and don't be naive thinking that this is an easy game. The only thing is, you just have to push through. When you're going to have failures, you're going to have difficult moments, you just got to push through. Tenacity is often the defining trait between success and failure. And here are a couple of facts that I picked up in preparing for today's podcast. 90% of investors fail due to a lack of persistence. They tend to give up before they reach their goal. And it's like that old image of the gold miner at the end of this long tunnel under the ground. And you can see that they've gone like through 30 feet of tunnel or 50 feet of tunnel. And they're 1 inch away from the gold and the treasure. And they just like, this is just taking too long. And they decide to give up. Well, like, when all it took was one more hit. That's what you should think about. The best investors have survived multiple market crashes. If you consider Warren Buffett, I've talked about him recently as well. He has lived through no less than 10 major market crashes. And his motto is, be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Another thing to think about is be aware of the 3-5 rule when it comes to real estate. Usually investors getting into real estate, years 1 to 2 are filled with mistakes and failures and disappointment. By year 3, you're finally getting better connected, and you're finally understanding how to structure a deal. And by year 5, if you've stayed in the game this long, you'll suddenly start to see the results. An important fact to consider, 60% of all high net worth individuals, millionaires, they had to restart their entire journey from zero. They went bankrupt. They had to start again. Plenty of us lose it all. We get the lesson, and then we come back stronger and wiser. And so you guys know my story, being down there, and it can be tough, but you figure it out. The last man standing strategy. If you want to be successful, you need to prepare the ground for the last man standing strategy. And this requires confidence, grit, and really strong mental fortitude, plus the ability to fund your hold period. And so that's why finance is important. But those guys that hold, they get the best deals. Like, they're the ones that when everyone else has left the market and is selling things off cheap, they're the ones picking up all of the bargains. Tenacity is more important than capital. 80% of successful investors started with almost nothing, a tiny amount of capital, but they had the tenacity to persist, and they kept on pushing on through. They got creative with their financing methods, and they leveraged their relationships. The most tenacious investors expect and anticipate dips, fails, and disappointment. They learn from it, they adapt to it, and they just know that it's part of the journey, and just dust yourself off and keep going. So key takeaways: you're going to face setbacks. It's just how it is. The market rewards those who stay in the game. Creativity and tenacity equals unlimited growth. Adapting is the ultimate form of tenacity. And remember to outlast the competition to win. Guys, hope you've enjoyed this one. Be tenacious. Look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Facade. If you enjoyed the show or found it useful in any way, could I please ask you to take a moment to leave a review over on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. There is no algorithm for the podcast, and so the only way we can get other people to find out about it is when it's shared by you. So if you can do that, it'd be great. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover on future episodes, please connect with me via the school community or just send me a message on Instagram or wherever. You'll see the links in the show notes below. You can stay up to date with all of my content and the projects that I'm working on by signing up for my weekly newsletter, and you'll find a link below in the show notes for that too. That's all for now, guys. I'll see you back here same time next week.